What is good? What's happening, everybody? It's your boy Ferris Milana, and welcome to another great edition of LGRN Interviews. Today, we're going to do something very special. The last couple of interviews, we've interviewed Jeff Pearlman, multi-time New York bestselling author, as well as Nathan Rule, who's a master audio technician out of LA. But today, we're going to do something a little special. We're going to be interviewing two great men about a movie that they are looking to finance and probably bring you to the masses. Really, it's a kind of a Kickstarter, or I believe it's called a Seek and See. I don't know. I got to double check the name. Let me double check it. A Seed and Spark. None other than shout out to our homie Dagan for connecting us to. Without further ado, I like keep the interview intro short. I'd like to introduce lead actor Cameron Lloyd and producer Angus Reid, as well as director of photography as well, Angus?
That's correct.
That's right. That's right. First, guys, let's talk about the movie. The movie is Nightmare at Nana's. It's kind of a 80s horror campy film. I want to, right off the bat, what gravitated you towards that specific version of horror? Has that always been a thing you guys liked growing up, or is that a kind of a new obsession of late?
I certainly, I grew up in the 80s watching 80s movies. Mm-hmm. I should say, though, right off the bat, though, that we're sort of conducting this interview in the shadow of the writer-director Austin Rice, who couldn't be here today. He had family obligations. But much of the inspiration, all of the inspiration for the film, the script, comes from him. And so he set up this project, and I will always sign up for anything that Austin is set to produce. Mm-hmm. So although I'm not primarily a horror film fan, I love the idea of producing a stoner horror comedy in the woods of Vermont where I live. And Cameron's on board. It's going to be gold.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Angus. I can speak for I've known Austin since we were in high school together, and we just would always talk about trauma films, The Toxic Avenger, Return to Nukem High. Mm-hmm. And I think with this film, he really gathered a cast and crew of 80s B horror and horror in general lovers. I'm just running through the list in my head, and there's special effects. We've got multiple of the actors all grew up on horror, are currently starring in other horror films. So we've got a super group of horror fans on this one. So I think we're gonna nail it.
Mm-hmm. I think go ahead, Ferris.
I
was just gonna say amusing about the 80s. I've been thinking about the 80s, culture and movies, especially lately. I was born in 1977, and so I totally grew up through the 80s watching those movies. And now they're, so I look back at that time as the golden age. And I think probably every generation feels that way about the movies of their childhood. But Austin wasn't even born in the 80s, and he still looks at the 80s. So I think that sort of shows that there is some objective value to those films. And in terms of the technical craft of filmmaking, you think about it, the 80s, that was sort of the final years of practical special effects.
Absolutely.
The Abyss came out in '89. That was the first CG creature on a film, really. And then Terminator 2 years later. And then after that, it was Pandora's Box, and they kind of never looked back to practical effects. So you had decades of technical and institutional knowledge about making practical special effects in movies. And the people who were doing that were just masters of their craft. I
think Angus, it is this lost art that we're seeing this resurgence of. We just got flooded with CGI, and I think people are so bored with it. So I see people that are born, even Gen Z and later millennials are we got to return to these 80s horror movies where there are the practical effects of real blood and real not real blood, but, real fake blood and real fake guts. And there's just something so silly and it just, I don't know, it captures you. You're
because
I can't look away.
It's a sense of it's laziness. People feel the laziness. You know what I mean? Where because I love Guillermo del Toro, right? You give Guillermo del Toro $100 million, he's gonna spend 70 million on it, on animatronics and puppets. You know what I mean? Like that's what he's always been that way, right? You know, like that's why he's a big the dude. This is an actor he always works with. Is it Phil Jones?
Oh,
Doug
the
Jones.
guy.
No,
Doug Jones. Yes, Doug Jones. Doug Jones. He's
Yeah.
always in a suit.
Mm-hmm.
He never has dots on his face, and then and then they do it like he's always in a suit that they made that he's been in a chair for 8-10 hours, and they're making him like he's a fish dude, and he's like, you're gonna be an actual fish dude, like no offense to Andy Serkis, I love Andy Serkis, but we're not putting dots on your face, which is another skill in its own, and I think Andy's pretty good at it, but like we're making you the actual creature, like in Hellboy or Shape of Water. Because you feel the texture of it when you watch it. In certain, and someone had a theory. We'll get into the interview a bit, but you guys kind of pick majors. People think that's why the lighting isn't as good anymore in movies, where they're hiding certain CGI shots with low lighting, so you can't really see that. Like that's a theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a theory. Could be a correct theory, but it's a theory nonetheless. So like it's a kind of a snowball effect. CGI is lazy and you're being lazy. And then you got to make sure the lighting hides it maybe, and it's just kind of snowballs. You know what I mean? By the way, let's get away from realistic lighting. Like no offense, I know it's shot at night, but I actually still want to see it in the movie. You know what I mean? That's my own personal opinion. But guys, let's get right into it, man. Can you guys tell me more about Nightmare at Nana's? I know Austin Rice, he wrote it, right? But what about you? What did you guys have to do within the process? Ideas? I read the synopsis. It's kind of scary. Also too, like, a creepy grandma house in the woods. That's creepy in itself without the stalker. You know what I mean?
Old ladies
like,
are scary.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Yeah, tell me more.
Well, yeah, I'll summarize the plot for your listeners since they haven't read the script. It's about two brothers who've been squabbling for a while, and as sort of a last sort of parting gesture of brotherly loyalty, one of them is going to drive the other across the state to a music audition. They get out of town and their car breaks down and they're stuck, and they get taken in by this kindly old lady in the woods, and not everyone makes it through the night at Nana's house alive. So Austin, sorry, go ahead, Cameron. Yeah,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Angus. I think you summarized it. I was just going to add: there's sword fights, there's metal, there's demon spirits, there's cannibalism. It's just like it's got everything in one movie, and it all works.
Perfect. Now second part of this question, right, is what drew you to this specific horror story for both of you, and then with you, Cameron, what drew you to this character specifically? So the story first, and then Cameron, can you talk about the character?
Angus, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I think the story that Austin wrote provides a lot of wonderful opportunities for doing the kind of filmmaking that I like, which is very hands-on, doing a lot of practical stuff, and a lot of sort of filmic problem solving. Breaking down really complex and challenging visual ideas into their components that you can actually put in front of a camera. You can write something absolutely crazy on the page and think at first blush, well, this is impossible, we can't film this. But then you break it down into, well, what do we have to actually show the audience to convey this story beat? And it starts to be more approachable. And Cameron and I worked together with Austin on a film called Lil Balzac 2. And there were a lot of these moments where, guys flying through the air and swinging down off a bridge and dangling from a trestle. Obviously, we couldn't film that with an actual actor, but in terms of the visual moments that we just have to put in front of a camera, each of them individually is approachable. And Nightmare at Nana's is like Lil Balzac 2 times 5. It's a lot of these little moments that will add up to more than the sum of their parts when they're all put together in the edit, with the sound effects kind of gelling it all together. And that's very exciting for me as a filmmaker. I'm not a visual artist. I can't draw, I can't write music, but I can sort of synthesize a an artwork out of these smaller components, many of them contributed by other artists, such as the actors and people who can paint and draw and write music. So I'm excited to take on such a huge task as a feature film.
Nice.
Yeah.
By the way, we do have a movie reaction to Lil Balzac on the channel, so go
Nice.
watch that after this interview as well. Little plug.
Check it
Cameron,
out. I think
check it out.
Before I jump into the story, I just got to say, working on Lil Balzac 2 was a blast. It was I'd done a lot of smaller projects, but I think the scale of what we were working on with the micro budget that we had, and then the finished product, Angus is selling himself a little bit short with how mind-blowing it was to see myself flying through the air and then grabbing onto this money bag and swinging over the bridge and falling into water. We were in this gymnastics studio for an evening, and I was just kind of falling into foam pits over and over again, exhausted, like, Jesus, when is this going to end? And then you see the movie and you go, that's what he did with it. So like, kudos to you, Angus, on that.
Thank you, Cameron.
I think Angus said it before, I'll work on anything that Austin wants to put out. I think he has just a great way of writing a story that has the sense of humor that I love, with this mix of humanity. And like, even in films like Lil Balzac 2 or Lil Balzac, this character that you just want to hate so much, you can't help but like feeling for him, even in his worst moments. And I think, this script is just a progression of his storytelling. We've really seen him getting better at capturing these characters and having this full picture of the story that he wants to tell in a way that's really tight and wrapped up. And so when he approached me about it, it was originally a script for continuing Lil Balzac, and I was on board to continue playing this character, Florida, who is just a psychopath. Getting back into that headspace would have been a lot of fun. But I think, as I'm sure Angus can speak more to this, because they've been probably talking about it longer than we have, or than I have with him. But I think as Austin continued working on the project, he realized that it was going to be boxed in by this idea of Lil Balzac, and he wanted to create characters that had more depth and there was more humanity. So when he approached me about Nick, I was so excited. He is this, he's one of the two brothers. He is a total like stoner metalhead, just doesn't have his life together, wants to make it big, but keeps tripping over his own feet. And, going into the project, I was like, cool, stoner metalhead, easy. But as you read the script and as you get into it, you realize that this guy has a drive that's more than just wanting to make it big. It's wanting to reconnect with his brother. It's wanting to fulfill a larger dream and see worth within himself. And so the more I read, the more I was taking notes, the more I realized, wow, this is a comedy role, which I love. I love character acting. I love getting in the comedy, but there are these moments where I really have to kind of tap into some serious emotion and self-reflection as a character. And I just love that challenge. So I'm really looking forward to that.
All right. It's wonderful. Angus, now I want to give you like a very specific question for you, Angus.
Sure.
Horror really relies on atmosphere. And how, because you're also the director of photography, how will your cinematography create the desired mood or tension that you guys plan to do for this film?
Well, I think with horror, a lot of it is getting the audience to imagine things that you're not actually putting on screen. That's, why they're often, filmed in darkness or at night, is because what the audience is imagining is behind that door or in that shadow is probably going to be scarier than anything you could, actually film. And so in this script, there's a lot of uncertainty in the story, or, mystery, I should say, in the story about who's the killer and what's going to happen and who's stalking the brothers. And so I just plan to do the Jaws thing and not show the killer until the very end. Not show it clearly. So that's it in a nutshell.
I think there's this.
Perfect. No, because I also have a second part of the question, which is kind of going to tell to you, Cameron, because what type of like visual inspirations are you looking for this project? Any specific films or filmmakers, and kind of toward to you, Cameron, like actors or characters in other films that you may take bits and pieces from, or is there no inspiration whatsoever?
Oh no, there's inspiration for sure. I think that there is this metalhead trope in films that I really am trying to avoid because I think your first thoughts when you jump into a character are kind of the simple idea of them, but when you go deeper, you kind of break them into the actual person that they are, and I think metalheads kind of get pushed into this genre of just being the dumb stoner, and that's not who this character is. So I hung out with a bunch of metalheads. I was a total like hardcore kid when I was younger, and they are like just genuinely sweet people. And so one of my biggest inspirations so far is I've been watching a lot of documentaries.
All right.
And if anybody has not seen it, check out Anvil, the story of Anvil. It's about this 80s hair metal or 80s thrash metal band that almost made it big in Canada. And then they fell off the radar. And so it's these guys who are in their 50s, just like pushing to make this dream happen, which is kind of where Nick would be in another 10 years. So just seeing these guys that, it's not, I first read the script as like, man, this guy's clueless. Like he has no idea that everyone thinks he's going to fail. But I watched this movie and these guys, it's not cluelessness. It's like, it's total belief. It's total belief in I'm going to make this, if I don't make this happen, then I've got nothing in my life. So it's like full commitment. So I've really enjoyed that. I've just been watching, what is it? The Decline of Western Civilization 2, a great documentary about 80s hair metal bands. I think put out in like the late 80s, early 90s. So I'm just trying to pull from real life, and then also revisiting the classics. I'm watching Shaun of the Dead to see how does Simon Pegg really nail that comedy and seriousness, because I want to bring both of those elements to it.
What about you, Angus? Any inspirations?
Well, I mean, Austin came to the table with a number of films that were his sort of touchstones as inspiration. Shaun of the Dead, absolutely. I think the big one that really all horror comedy subsequent to it owes a debt to is Evil Dead 2, which was 87, I think. That's kind of the gold. There we go. The gold standard of comedy plus horror, practical effects. I mean, right at the end of the 80s, extraordinarily inventive camera work. So I'm absolutely going to give that a rewatch. I've seen it a few times, but sort of to see what can you do just with surprising camera work. Apart from that, the Return of the Living Dead, the Living Dead series. What were some of the other ones that we talked about? Mandy. The most recent one was Mandy.
Mandy, yes. The Witch.
Mandy's amazing. I think definitely just for like the oh god, it's basically all atmosphere, which is really cool. I think also early Peter Jackson, maybe not Bad Taste, but Brain Dead, or like what's the other? It was Brain Dead in New Zealand. Dead Alive. Dead Alive is one of my all-time favorite classic 80s horror comedies. It is just along with Evil Dead 2, that blend of like where you are like gagging one second and then cracking up the next because of how ridiculous and over the top it is.
Well, guys, we've talked about a lot about inspirations and more of the creative process, but I now want to talk about the other aspect of the filmmaking process, something I never really think about because we're usually watching movies that have Disney gives them 100 million or like 50 million or whatever budgeting and raising money, right? And for the potential supporters that are watching the show, right, who might be hesitant for indie horror, what would you say to them that makes your project stand out and is worth investing in? What, like, kind of, yeah.
I mean, if you're on the fence about indie horror, I don't know if I can convince you. But if you're already pretty sure you like indie horror or you're interested in it, I think this is going to be a really fun film in that genre.
If you are on the fence about indie horror,
people are.
I want you to reach
people
out
off the
to
fence?
me.
How do you get people off the fence, right? Because I feel like horror doesn't get the credit it deserves, right? Because in the mainstream media, it's kind of like it's the ugly stepchild to the left.
Dude,
but
if you show up to the theater, and look at any of the last 20 major horror films of like the past couple of years, they're all jump scares. They're all like huge budgets. They like Angus said, they reveal who the killer is right away. You know exactly what you're going to get. So there's like this formulaic approach in Hollywood, which is just not serving the horror community. You do have your other studios like A24, which are putting out more indie horror. And if you look at a lot of those guys, they got their starts from indie horror projects like this. So this is a stepping stone for us. Your investment is going to bring more of those major art house horror films. I don't want to call this art house because like we said, it's 80s campy B horror movie, but there is art to that. There is this like a little on the nose, total awareness that we are making this homage to these classic movies that you all like. And major Hollywood films are not going to revisit the fun, special practical effects, the campiness, the gore, the silliness that happens in all of these beloved films, but our film will. So if you donate, you're gonna get this film, and hopefully it's gonna launch us, and you'll get some more of this stuff. You're not gonna get any jump scares from us, and maybe you will, but they'll be coupled with,
It'll be extra surprising because we just told you were not going to get any.
Exactly.
Boom. Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, I fully understand you. Like I think we've gone to more of a formula now. It's kind of like just a plug and play type thing, really. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I like horror. I think horror. I'm not a horror fan, right? I'm not a big person, but I've watched certain horror movies that I've really loved, right? I don't know if Scream is a horror film or is that is that horror?
That's horror comedy, I would say.
Horror comedy, exactly. So I love Scream. I'm a big fan of the original one, not these other ones. The original, I'm a big fan of it. And then the way they reveal the killer at the end, honestly, I was taken aback. I was like, I can see why you're a classic.
Okay, so that's a perfect example. Wes Craven, the director, he got his start making salacious films and trying to pitch this or trying to make this movie Nightmare on Elm Street, which was just this little known, again, like it's ours is a micro budget, but his was pretty micro budget as well. And that was an indie horror film that didn't have a lot of funding, didn't have a lot of press, didn't have, and now it is the staple. It is like, if you look at the tiers of classic horror, Nightmare on Elm Street is up there.
Yeah. So is there any particular scene or sequences that you guys are planning that you guys are excited for that's going to break that formula? Can you reveal anything like that? Because we still want people to be a little in the dark, but a crumb. Can the people get a little crumb?
I mean, I will say that you'll be surprised about who the killer is, and you will be surprised at the level of shock and awe.
There are some scenes with some characters that are going to get done in and the only way we can stage these deaths is with some full head castings that are going to be completely destroyed.
Yeah, let your imagination do the rest with that one.
Yeah. So Angus,
It'll blow your mind.
You are the director of photography. Probably. How do you plan on working with the director to make sure like the visual style complements your overall vision of the film?
Well, Austin writes his scripts and kind of just goes wild, and then and then I read them and say, well, this is great. Let's make a little tweak here, and then it becomes 10 times more filmable. And so that's part of the sort of filmmaking problem solving that I was describing earlier. That's sort of very interesting and fulfilling for me, is taking something that seems borderline impossible and then making it into something that can actually be filmed practically and on a small budget. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. So I was going to say, like, as an example, if you look at Balzac 2, if I read the script, Balzac smokes bath salts, walks over to a giant talking dumpster who then swallows him like a sarlacc pit, where he falls down, and then has two characters that stand on his shoulders like an angel and devil. Like, it's just ridiculous on the page. There's no way this is going to happen. And then you watch the movie and you go like, how did they do that? These practical, like, claymation mixed with digital, and Angus, like, that's your hand doing magic again. So like it comes off the page and onto the screen, and you just shake your head and go, that works. How did that work?
Thanks. I can give an example, a concrete example of something from Little Balzac 2, which I don't know if you've seen, Ferris. I don't know if your viewers have, but I'll describe it. There's a scene where there's a cop car chase, and the Cameron's character and others are getting away from a crime scene in a van, and these cops pull up behind them and start trying to track them down. In the script, it says the cop car rams the van and shakes them all up, and that's what alerts them to the cops. And I went through various ideas of how I could film a car ramming a van without wrecking either vehicle, because that was not an option. And ultimately, I said, I don't think there's any way we can do this. Let's just change the script so the cop just shoots at the van, and that's what's in the script. Although we had actually already shot the interiors of the van with everyone shaking around like they had just been rammed. So it's like, I don't know if that's a plot hole or what, but
that's fine.
I'd never noticed that.
Yeah, but that's the sort of thing that, like, some things you can just do on a low budget with models or sound effects, and some things deceptively are like way more difficult, like physical contact between cars. That's something just like I can't fake that. But gunshots, totally easy. It's just visual effects,
Yeah, because most indie films, they do have budget limitations. That's what was gonna be. That was gonna be one of my questions, but then you kind of answered. I was gonna be like, how do you maximize with the limited budget you had? But like you said, you change scripts to go from ramming to shooting. You may have to just kind of say, screw it. We already shot the shaking. It's whatever. But they'll hear the gunshot in the background. Are there any other instances of that way? Like not just the physical contact, but like something that you kind of ran into that you struggled at first, but then you figured it out. For this film.
For this film, yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Follow-up question?
No. I like the tension you did, because you know what? Because guys, if you want to know the answer to that, go invest and watch the movie.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be one of those things where it's like as we get closer and as we're starting to like workshop it, David Zay's our special effects guy. I'm sure he's going to be doing a lot of tweaking and with those different casts that Angus said.
Yeah. Well, here's one that I can just a little breadcrumb for your listeners. I will say that one of our producers, Sam McFarland, was born without a left hand, and we're gonna make use of that little feature.
All right. I am intrigued. I can't wait to watch this.
That's production value. You know, we don't have to use CGI. We don't have to, have him, go like this and act.
Exactly.
People are going to see that and say, "That looks really good."
Yeah. How did you get rid of that dude's hand?
Those guys are geniuses.
Hey, man. We're just like that, guys. Come on. But guys, I know we've kind of come to. I've kind of really asked all my questions. I don't want to keep poking and prodding because I kind of feel like if we reveal too much about the process, I feel like you guys are still in the process. And we'll probably talk about it a little bit later when you guys finish the film. Talk about the film a little more. I kind of want you guys back. It's kind of like a part 2 for this. Absolutely, I would really love that. If you guys don't, perfectly fine.
Love to when we have some stuff to show you.
Absolutely, that'd be wonderful. That would be wonderful. But before we go, one more go around. Like we talked about, why people should invest. Like, the state of horror right now. People like it, and people kind of like they don't like it, and it's kind of thrown to the wayside a little bit sometimes. Sometimes it's not. What, like, one more thing. What about this? Like, we already talked about, it's 80s, it's camp, it's bringing it back. What is old is new again. One more go around. Why should I watch, and why should I be invested?
Angus?
Yeah. Well, I think on the subject of the 80s, when CG came out started to be a thing in the early 90s, I think initially there was this feeling from filmmakers that, this is so freeing. I can now do anything that's in my imagination. And I think what's interesting, it sort of stopped being interesting. It's like anything you dream up, you can just do, and now it's on screen with no limitations. And now I think what we're realizing, 30 years after the start of that, is that the limitations of doing things practically are part of what makes it so interesting. It's like, how did they do that? Nowadays, you don't have to wonder how did they do that. They use computers. So, behind the scenes, making of such and such a movie reels used to be really exciting and interesting. Yes. And now it's just, a lot of shots of people looking over guys' shoulders sitting at a computer and watching wireframe models rotate on a screen.
It's just like you're either saying, that's good CGI or that's bad CGI. There's no contemplation happening about how it happened.
So I think what's exciting both for the filmmakers and for the audiences is appreciating the cleverness of putting something on screen without having this magic, lamp of just rub it and a dinosaur comes out, In terms of this specific film, well, this is a very indie film. This isn't like A24 indie or Fox Searchlight indie where it's like the independent wing of a major film. This is a bunch of people in a small Vermont town making something on a shoestring. And Cameron, you used the phrase art or art house and then sort of bit your tongue. But I would say it is art insofar as it's not business. We're not being paid. What we get out of this is not a paycheck, but we get a film that hopefully we love and that hopefully the people who have helped us make it will love. And that's kind of the difference in my mind between indie filmmaking and Hollywood or professional filmmaking, that if it's a job, then you're making something that you think will sell. But honestly, there's not much of a market, not much of a financial market for indie films. You can't really sell an indie film to a major Hollywood studio anymore. I think the time for that has come and gone. You release it yourself online. Maybe you get it streaming on Troma. The Little Balzac films are on Troma, which has been great. But mainly you're making these films for love of the art and for passion for the project. And I think if people want to take a look at the proposal, the pitch video that we put together, and if they think, yeah, this looks pretty good, I'd like to see the film that comes out of that, then we'd love it if they would consider supporting it, and hopefully we'll have a film that they will love to watch.
Well, thank you. You actually said something that kind of just piqued my interest. Like, why do you think that's broken down over the years, right? Because back in the day, you would make an indie film, you would go to like a festival. I don't know what that famous festival in Utah.
Sundance.
Sundance. You would go to Sundance, you would screen it, try to find a way, and some exec would, when did the breakdown happen? And is that repairable, or is that just kind of like the new world we live in? You make indie films, you release them yourself, and you just keep them moving for the love of the game.
I think it could still happen, but I think there's just so many more people making films. It used to be there was kind of a financial and technical, knowledge-based barrier to filmmaking, and cameras are so much cheaper, lighting is so much cheaper, and you don't have to go to film school anymore. All the information is available for free on the internet, which is wonderful. I've learned so much. I taught myself to be a visual effects artist from YouTube tutorials. But everyone else in the world has access to that same information. So, it may still happen occasionally that you can make a film, for a low budget and sell it. But it's like playing the lottery, and there's a lot more people playing than there used to be.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories is Evil Dead, the first one. It was just a bunch of dudes and their friends shooting in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And then, boom, Sam Raimi became famous. And then Bruce Campbell's in everything he does.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Bruce Campbell as Sam Max from Burn Notice. I didn't know he was in Evil Dead. That's my one thing that's a little weird. It's like, oh, Bruce Campbell, yeah. They'd be like, yeah, Ash. I was like, who's Ash? I don't know who Ash is. I know him as Sam Max. They're like, what? Yeah. Shout out to
Bruce
my Burn
Campbell.
Notice fans.
Bruce Campbell, if you're watching this, we'd love to have you in our film.
That would be awesome. Hey man, he ain't working.
I first knew him from Briscoe County Jr. That was a great
oh
show.
that was good. That was good.
Good show.
I actually have speaking of, y'all said y'all from Vermont. I actually have a cool Vermont story. Well, I don't know if it's a cool Vermont story, but it's a Vermont story. I meet Dagan,
Yeah.
And then Dagan tells me he's from Vermont. I was like, oh, that's dope, man. You from Vermont? That's cool. Same day, I go to work, and I'm a grocer, right? So I back then, and I'm just and then they're buying beer, and I had to card this dude, and he gives me his ID, and his ID is from Vermont. I'm like, oh man, you're from Vermont? That's crazy. My friend, I just found out my friend's from Vermont, and then he leaves, and then a lady comes in, and she's buying beer, and I had to card her, and she then pulls out her Vermont ID, and I'm like, wait, did I just meet 3 people from Vermont in like one day? That is like one day. It was insane.
And where are you based?
I'm a Bay Area, San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Well, that is.
I mean, if you bump into 3 Vermonters in one day, that's a pretty good day, man.
Yeah, I feel like I should have won something. You know what I mean? I'm like this should have been like something cool, right?
Yeah.
So
Char maple syrup and
exactly. Just like Ben and Jerry's just pops up out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, nothing happened though, and I was like, oh man, shout out to Vermont. I want to go there one day. It's great photos.
I mean, I think that's, like Vermont's a beautiful place. We're filming the whole film in Vermont. Well, not the whole film. We're looking for other locations too, but it's based in Vermont, and it's, if you get a New England horror film on the screen, and it's like, that's true horror. So if you love Vermont, you love horror, this is the movie for you.
See, I said we're about to leave, but then now I have something to repeat again. Like, what are the challenges of shooting on location in Vermont, and what are the bonuses of it?
I mean, the number one challenge is weather.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bonuses.
Too cold, too rainy?
Yeah, I mean, the rain can come and just stay for a week, and if you're scheduled for 2 weeks of shooting, then that affects things. We're trying to plan around this by having cover sets for some scenes that we can switch to.
I think a huge
bonus
is, I mean, if you've ever been in the Vermont woods at night, it could be truly scary. So like, the whole setting just really lends itself to atmosphere and the unknown of what is in those woods. So I think it's going to be, it's perfect for this film. H.P.
Lovecraft famously spent some time in Brattleboro, and there's a hill called Round Mountain just out in West Brattleboro, where Cam and I are sitting currently. And he considered New England to be just the scariest place ever.
Makes sense. Like Stephen King, every book is based in Maine.
That's right.
And I'm never gonna step foot in that state. I'm just not gonna do it.
That's
like, be like, hey Ferris, you want to go to Maine? Absolutely not.
If you've ever seen, if you've never seen the movie The Witch, check it out. Like that movie, so much of the horror of that movie is just the New England woods and the unknown of what's going on in there. So
yeah, man, it's just like, it's like dark, it's desolate. There's a fog. There's always a fog. It's like, it's always, there's a fog. Always. I'm like, why is there always a fog? What's going on right now?
Yeah, it's never that foggy like, here sometimes.
Yeah, it's like in the movies, it's always like a fog in the woods. And I'm like, shouldn't this woods be like used for lumber? Like, why are the trees so tall? Like, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. You know, I get freaked out in my house at night when I hear like a creak. So imagine me being in the woods and
is
it's
there fog
foggy.
in your house?
Yes, there is. Actually, famously, in the Bay Area, there's a fog that always comes. The Bay Areans actually named it Carl the Fog. So when the fog comes, it's called we're like Carl's back. You know, that's what we're like. Yeah,
that's a movie idea right there.
Yeah,
Carl the Fog.
Yeah,
it's like the Mist.
Yeah, it's like
Carl the Fog becomes a person.
Yeah,
and just goes on a rampage.
The parody of the Mist.
Yeah, exactly.
Carl the Fog.
You didn't appreciate me. You're right. My bad, Carl. I'm sorry. But on that note, guys, thank you guys so much for joining me. Tell where people can find you, support you. The links will be in the description. All the links you guys gave us will be there. But any other ways of support and constant communication. What's up, Kat? How you doing?
Well, if you want to see what a film that we've done so far, you might really like Lil Balzac 2, which stars Cameron. And I don't know if you have that link, but you can also just search YouTube for LILBALZAC.
Our reaction will be in the links as well.
Oh,
we did react to it.
Check it out.
Great.
We put a lot of hard work into that one, and it is hilarious and just a really fun ride.
What about you, Cameron? Where can people support you, interact with you?
I mean, you can find me. I mean, really, just go to Seed and Spark. That's the, if you want to talk to me, that's cool too. You can find me as Cedar Was a Boy on Instagram, all one word. But I don't know why you'd want to. It's probably
you seem like a great guy, Cameron.
I am. I'm
heroes.
Yeah.
Fun. I'm a fun guy. What I'll probably do is engage with you for like 3 minutes and then be like, hey, have you checked out our Seed and Spark yet? Because that's the big drive for this film right now, is just making sure that we've got people who are as excited as we are, and donating $5, $10. If you want to throw down $5,000, I think it's like Your Name Presents Nightmare at Nana's. So
Nightmare at Your Name Here. At that point.
Yeah, we'll change the first character's name.
Yeah, because currently you're at 53% raised. We're at 19,655. Guys, there's a multitude of tiers of incentives. You can, social media shout out at 25, personalized thank you at 50, test screening invitation 75. That seems a lot of good money. And then it goes up and up, goes to 100, 200, 5, 8, 800, 9. Just like the way you keep. So like all the information we've been talking about will be in the links at the Seed and Spark. Just click that link, find something that's good for you. Like we say always when we promote our coffee page, right? It's coffee. We have a multitude of tiers. Pick the one that's right for you. Same thing with the Seed and Spark. Go out there, check it out, and pick it up. Because at the end of the day, right, the reason these big companies and movies are big companies now, they had to start somewhere. Disney wasn't Disney until Disney made something of note. He was just some dude doodling the mouse. And now what Disney is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you donate, feel free to hit me up on Instagram and I'll send you a thank you video. Like that, that's not on the Seed and Spark page, but if you really want me to say thanks, I would like personally thank every single person who donates to this film.
Well, at the end of the day, thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having us.
Let's do a round two when the movie's being made. When the movie is complete, I want to talk about it a little bit more, because I always find indie movies fascinating, because it's DIY, limited budgets. It's where the real creativity comes. You know what I mean? And I thoroughly enjoy it because I remember once there was a story of Terminator where they were filming Terminator and James Cameron told Arnold just to walk across the street and just punch a car window, and they just broke the window, and that was it. They had no permits. They just did it. So like ingenuity. I really enjoy that. So guys, thank you guys so much for joining us.
We have no permits, so yeah.
Boom, right there. No permit.
It's gonna be great. Look it up. We're gonna punch so many cars.
Exactly. Who needs a permit? Guys, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and we will be back with part 2.
Thanks so much, Ferris.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.